Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Today's episode is going to have some very minor spoilers from the first episode of the second season of The Mandalorian. In this episode, we once again return to Tatooine for like the 20th time in Star Wars history. There are billions and billions of planets in this galaxy, many of which are not full of sand dunes. Come on guys, be more creative here. Anyway, the reason Din Djarin once again returns to the planet Tatooine is to find another Mandalorian. He believes that one of his kin can help him with his mission to find Baby Yoda's own kin. The Mando's journey takes him to the small outpost of Mos Pelgo. This was a small mining town that was far too small to have its own law enforcement or security, but large enough to be a very attractive target for bandits and outlaws. During the Imperial era, Mos Pelgo faced many threats, starting with the Great Drought. I know a drought on a planet like Tatooine seems like a strange concept, but basically it means increased heat and so little moisture in the air that not even the evaporators of moisture farmers were able to collect much water for survival. Now, Jabba the Hutt was the de facto ruler on this planet where there was almost no government structure. Jabba the Hutt had survived the Clone Wars and the Shadow Collective, and he even managed to cut a deal with the Empire to provide slave labor and other resources for their various projects around the galaxy. Hutt space was sort of safe for now, and aside from the occasional water taxes, Jabba the Hutt created a tolerable peace on the planet. Everyone on Tatooine came to Jabba the Hutt if they needed something or wanted to do something, even the Tusken Raiders. And so when Princess Leia and her crew of rebel misfits murder this crime lord during a weekend recreational yachting trip, there's a sudden power vacuum on the planet that is quickly exploited by many of the smaller criminal enterprises on the planet. This breakdown in order actually allows a lot of slaves to escape from their owners. Many of these former slaves, including an individual named Cobb Vanth, found a new life of freedom in settlements like Mos Pelgo. But settlements like Mos Pelgo would also attract organizations like the Mining Collective, who were clearly not a mining collective, but just a bunch of armed thugs. Several townsfolk in Mos Pelgo were killed when the Mining Collective decides to raid the town, and whoever survived was quickly enslaved and forced to work in the mines. Now, Cobb Vanth managed to escape the attack and even stole a container of celiac oxalate from the raiders, but without food or water of any type of transportation, the man soon collapsed of exhaustion and dehydration in the desert, only to be rescued by a group of Jawas. The Jawas are interested in Cobb's minerals, and in exchange, Cobb Vanth wanted a suit of Mandalorian armor that the Jawas had just recently recovered from a Sarlacc pit. What we don't see in the TV show is that during this incident, there was another individual in the Sandcrawler with Cobb Vanth, and that was a guy named Adwin Charu. Now, Cobb understands Jawas. They're all about building rapport. You know, buy something small here, maybe avoid shooting them for stealing the repulsors off of your vehicle because they're a bunch of filthy criminals. And then finally, they'll open up the back room, which is where the Jawas hide all of their really high-end stolen crap. Now, Cobb Vanth, being a nice guy, sees that Adwin Charu doesn't have the same understanding of Jawa mercantilism, and so he offers to vouch for this newcomer so that he can gain access to some of the better stuff. Because that's what freemen on Tatooine do, they help each other out. But Adwin Charu, who clearly isn't a local, expects that Cobb wants something from him and offers to pay him. Cobb, of course, refuses, and Adwin actually sneers at him. At this point, Cobb realizes there's something off about this guy and asks him if he's a part of one of these mining organizations that are just rushing onto Tatooine. Adwin admits that he's a part of a group known as the Red Key Company. Although it's also not really a company, it's more like an organized group of thugs looking to exploit Tatooine's minerals. And so Adwin Charu and Cobb Vanth enter the Jawa's back room together, and they both set their sights on the same suit of Mandalorian armor that used to belong to Boba Fett. Now, Adwin shows Cobb his blaster on his hip as a warning, but Cobb isn't messing around and immediately shoots him in the shoulder. He doesn't kill the Red Company representative, but he wants to send a message to them that they aren't welcome. Shortly after Cobb Vanth returns to Mos Pelgo wearing his new Mandalorian armor, he walks straight into the Cantina because this is a Western after all, and he starts gunning down Mining Collective thugs left and right. His armor is able to shrug off direct blaster bolts, and it terrifies the remaining Mining Collective members, who all try to escape on a speeder, which Cobb then takes out with a well-timed backpack rocket. A year later, it's 5ABY, and Mos Pelgo has been renamed Freetown, and now Cobb Vanth, the Marshal and Mayor of the town, has basically organized enough protection around the town to allow it to grow and become a very prosperous place for freed slaves. It's at this moment that the Red Key Company attacks. They attempt to smuggle an infant hut to the palace dais on Mos Pelgo. But Cobb Vanth and his townies managed to stop them, and they even seized the baby hut for themselves. This is important because for some reason or another, most people on Tatooine still accept the Hutts as rulers of the planet. There's almost a nostalgia for the order and stability that Jabba once brought to the planet. Nostalgia usually leaves out some of the more terrible things from the past, like Jabba's extremely high water taxes during the Great Drought. But the point is, most people on Tatooine want one gangster in charge rather than a dozen smaller gangsters fighting each other and destroying everything. Now, the Red Key Company wanted to install their own hut on the palace dais of Mos Pelgo in order to legitimize their rule. Hut babies like Baby Yodas kind of mature very slowly. Hutts rarely even left their mother's sacks until they were around 50 years old, and they weren't considered adults until they became 200 years old, so they were very easy to control. And now that Freetown had its own Hutt baby, it actually legitimized the rule of Cobb Vanth even more. And because the Hutts haven't been able to appoint a new leader on Tatooine, Freetown's baby Hutt might be the only one on the planet, giving Cobb Vanth quite a lot of leverage. He might even try to claim control of the entire planet. It seems like the logical step. Around the same time, Cobb Vanth and one of his associates saves a man named Malakili from the Red Key Company in the desert. Malakili was a former beastmaster in Jabba's palace, and now Cobb wants him to take care of the baby Hutt and raise it. Cobb also uses Malakili to broker a peace with the local Tusken Raider clans. Freetown would give the Tusken Raiders water, and they even had a crate dragon egg to trade as well, which the Tuskens obviously really like. In exchange, the Tusken Raiders will not only stop their raids on Freetown, they'll even help protect them from outsiders. This was probably one of the first times in Tatooine history that the Tusken Raiders allied with anyone. They were basically a bunch of savages. The Tusken Raiders also seemed to really respect the fact that Freetown had its own hut on the palace dais. Now, the Red Key Company would attack Freetown once again, and they did it with a much larger force and were able to overwhelm the town's defenses. But at the last minute, the Tusken Raiders arrive and save the day. Now, 4 years later, Din Djarin would arrive, and for some reason, the Tusken Raiders are once again at war against Cobb Vanth and Freetown. Perhaps it's a different tribe, but with the help of Din Djarin, they managed to create peace once again between Freetown and the Raiders. And together, they all hunt a massive crate dragon and successfully kill it. Although Cobb Vanth exchanges his Fett armor for Mando's help, he has now solidified his rule even further. Although Cobb Vanth seems like a moral and good individual, the repeated attacks and attempts to take over Freetown probably has changed him significantly.
Look, pal, I'm sure you call the shots where you come from, but round here, I'm the one who tells folks what to do.
The term power corrupts absolutely probably applies here. Simply put, the more power an individual has, the more a person's sense of morality lessens in the pursuit of that power. It doesn't mean that Cobb Vanth will turn into some evil dictator, but in order to protect Freetown, he'll probably have to expand his rule to a wider area. And now, with the Tusken Raiders allied with him, along with this baby Hutt to legitimize his rule, he definitely has a pretty good opportunity to take control of Tatooine. Now, I imagine the Mandalorian will stick around on Tatooine for another episode at least to find Boba Fett and talk to him, but it will be interesting to see what happens to Freetown and Cobb Vanth, because we know the Hutts, for the most part, will not return to Tatooine for the next few decades at least. Well, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think about my theory. And also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below for all the latest content about The Mandalorian. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.